Well, that's the $64 question. That is, what forces have to be in play for the federal government to weigh in? And the configuration of the federal government right now is such that it's unlikely to see any decisive federal government action. There is a gun bill that passed the House of Representatives not too long ago, two provisions that over 90% of Americans support, that calls for uniform background checks for all gun exchanges. That doesn't exist now. And it calls for a 10-day waiting period for purchase of a gun if a person does not clear a background check initially. And those are perfectly sensible measures, but even those measures face a very tough slog in the United States Senate. And there you have the complicating factor of the existing filibuster threat, which has not been done away with as of yet. And that is the threat that that requires 60 votes to end debate, to have a vote on something instead of the usual simple majority of 51. That's a huge roadblock right there. Secondly, though, there is growing public support for stronger gun measures. We have seen a lot of action in the states. There's been a great deal of activity occurring in the states, in a number of states. So that's really where the policy change has started to occur.
Well, let me get to that. The weapon that the shooter in Boulder reportedly used was an AR-15 style semi-automatic rifle, a weapon of war, Professor. How easy or difficult is it for someone like that to get their hands on a weapon like that in the state of Colorado, or really in other states? Is it up to states to decide that?
Well, it is as of today. From 1994 to 2004, there was a federal limited assault weapons ban, but it lapsed in 2004 because that's how the law was written. There's been no successful federal legislation since then, although proponents promised to offer a new assault weapons bill now in the aftermath of this. And indeed, it's no coincidence that mass shooters increasingly are using assault weapons to commit these kinds of heinous crimes. The most common weapon used is a handgun, but more and more of these incidents involve assault weapons which have interchangeable large capacity magazines, which also call for regulation, and which fire bullets at a very, very high velocity and do tremendous damage. When assault weapons are used, more people die and the injury rate is greater than with other firearms.
Let me tell you what Senator Ted Cruz, a Republican from Texas, had to say during Senate hearings on gun control debate. He said, every time there's a shooting, we play this ridiculous theater where this committee gets together and proposes a bunch of laws that would do nothing to stop these murders. But what they propose, not only does it not reduce crime, it makes it worse. Does that kind of logic make sense to you? I mean, I know you're an academic, you're a professor, but you know a lot about this issue.
Well, I think he's factually incorrect to say that these measures do nothing. There have been an increasing number of studies of a variety of gun regulations because we have tests in states that have some of these regulations, and we know that gun regulations do have a positive effect on the overall death rate. So to just throw up your hands and say that it's all theater and to say that laws just don't make a difference flies in the face of the fact that laws do make a difference, and that's how societies change their behavior. So he obviously is somebody, he's a gun rights person, he has no interest in seeing gun legislation move ahead, and I can't say that that's much of a surprise.
And what about the gun lobby, NRA? How much of a role do they play in this debate? I mean, should President Biden, should Congress be taking on the NRA when they're clearly politicians who, you know, have a cozy relationship with the gun lobby group?
Well, in the 2008 nationwide midterm elections, candidates all around the country aggressively adopted a pro-gun safety agenda and were elected to Congress, elected to state offices, and overwhelmed the NRA. We now have a new generation of gun safety groups that spend as much or more money than the NRA, that are developing grassroots bases around the country, and that have been gradually more and more effective. That was kind of short-circuited in the 2020 elections because of the pandemic and the other factors that came into play. So there's reason to believe that there is real momentum, and the NRA still has its base of support throughout the country, but the organization itself is deeply crippled because of mostly financial problems that it brought upon itself. So as an organization, it's not in a good position right now to show the kind of old-fashioned muscle that it used to show.
All right, we'll leave it.